Let's talk about Tears of the Kingdom. I've rewritten this video like 3 times, so now I've decided to I'm just reading out of my notes app about my thoughts because I can't formulate them properly otherwise, so hope you don't mind some rambling. I think Tears of the Kingdom is a really good game, but it still pisses me off for whatever reason. Why does Nintendo have to do so much good in a game and then chop off their own leg? My temple tier list: lightning, fire, water, wind, spirit. My temple boss battles tier list: wind, fire, lightning, spirit, water. I think I liked all of the bosses and the temples in this game other than the spirit temple. I hated it for whatever reason. I get the whole thing it's supposed to be with all the parts and how you have to do certain things to get the frickin' thing over and blah blah. I did not like it at all. I think the Lightning Temple was really good, and I like the callback to Ocarina of Time, even though I played Ocarina of Time after I finished this game. I feel like when it comes to the temples, though, the Wind Temple was another sort of low point for the temples for me, but it was completely carried by the aspect of the boss battle. The boss battle is amazing. It's such a cool, like, theatrical thing, which is like a big reason I like this game as much as I do, is like the theatrics of that boss battle, the theatrics of some of the cutscenes. Some of the cutscenes hit so well. I think the tears are similar to the memories in Breath of the Wild. I think that those are a nice thing to have in the game. When you let your storytelling be done so poorly outside of those things, you're like, overall, you're just bad at telling a story. There could have been so much more effort in the cutscenes that you get when you finish a temple. The only one that matters is the Spirit Temple. All the rest of them are Mad Libs. They're just awful, like, repeating of the same words. There's nothing of substance gained from finishing them other than your companion. Like, it's just so repugnant. It's so bad. Just so bad. Like, they put so much effort into so many things. I saw something about how, like, at the bottom of the freaking thing you dive down, or like Zelda falls. There's a torch there because she was holding a torch before. She just nice attention to detail. Maybe some detail to these fucking cutscenes. Like, do anything that gives some like rewarding aspect out of the fact that they're cutscenes rather than just like text on the screen. I mean, even as text on the screen, I would have rolled my eyes. But that's like my biggest complaint of this game, is how they're not telling a like otherworldly story through the tears or through the game at all, but they're telling a pretty good just Zelda story, and it is absolutely gutted by the fact that these cutscenes for the temples are so bad. It's just really interesting to see how bland the story kind of is if you skip all the tears and just do the temples, because the temples aren't actually meant for story beats at all, because they're all self-contained, and it's such an awkward way of storytelling, which is why they go with the tier system, which I like. But also it's just, they make it so that the tiers are very much not intertwined with gameplay, which is, I guess it's like you can get the story without the gameplay. Like, if you don't want to experience, like, you can understand how we got here, and then you still have to fight Ganon. It's weird. Like, I'm like, even now I'm having like contradictions, because I'm like, I really like the fact that the tiers exist, but I feel like they are almost, and I like the aspects of like the way that they present them in this game, where they're like, oh, like, people came into contact with these and they were hit with memories, and that's why they drew these outlines and stuff. It's also interesting because these things just kind of appear, and it's because initially it's like the start of this essentially new timeline is made by Zelda going back in time, and then those things appear, but these people are from this there's a lot of timeline bullshit, is how I'll put it. Like, I'm not gonna even try to explain it, because I'm putting in more thought than Nintendo probably is when it comes to timeline bullshit, because they don't care that much. They're just trying to tell a story and make a game. They're not trying to justify every single thing with explicit information. That's just me being like, I want to know. The aspect of exploration in this game is still here, and it's something that I feel is even more like a central point, I guess. There's a lot more things in this world, but there's generally just more to explore now because we have 2 tiers on top of the single tier cake we already had, which, is the normal overworld, the sky, and the depths. I did not have the depths like spoiled or anything. I didn't even hear about them talking about it in Lookout Landing. I just happened upon it and I was pumped. That shit was just my perception of the game like completely altered at that point, even where I was like, oh, this is going to be a good game. And it was, except for some aspects of it, which is why I'm talking about it. I mean, even if it was like a perfect game, I'd want to talk about it. I think it is a game that drives conversation. There's just so much you can talk about it without giving away too much and still like relish in experiencing that same experience through the game. I think the shift back to some semblance of a normal Zelda game with temples and everything is really neat. There was a lot of good additions, a lot of good callbacks, a lot of good just going back and doing things like the temples. Not making it required is obviously smart and good, and I like the way that you have to approach Ganon if you do not finish certain temples and stuff like that. Or I'm not exactly sure if you only do some of the temples, go and fight Ganon. I'd assume those boss battles are cut out, but it's like I know that there's middle point of the story where after you finish all of the temples outside the Spirit Temple, you have to go to Hyrule Castle with the fake Zelda and everything. That's when you realize she's fake, and that's when the story will then hold your hand to the Spirit Temple. I am so glad that the Spirit Temple does not have to have a handhold to get to it. You can brute force your way to the Spirit Temple, which is what I did. I did the Spirit Temple second. It was my second temple in the game, and I love that fact, is the fact that I was able to do that because the game just let me. And I think that's like one of the biggest things about this game that I'm glad they kept onto, is just letting you do the thing. When it comes to the voice acting in this game, I cannot tell you if the voice performances by some of the past champions were any good, because I hardly remember the cutscenes they were in because they were so bad. They probably did a passing job, because if they were bad, I would have remembered it. I think all of the companions in the game have good voice actors for the most part. I think the fact that what's-his-face is Goro. Of course I don't remember his name. I have goblin brain. I remember a bunch of this other stuff, but I don't remember like the Goron companion's name. I remember Tulin's name for some reason. He's got a fun name. I think all of the companions have at least passable voice acting, even if they do have some annoying traits. There are some specific cutscenes I want to talk about because I just think they were done really well. I think the tiers all did a good enough job of giving us new information, and the way they were structured was done well enough where even out of order, I think they're like, they don't detract from each other out of order or anything. It was just done really well. Unlocking the final tier cutscene where Zelda actually turns into the dragon, I think the emotional impact of that scene is really well done. The voice performance by Zelda in this game, I think, I feel like the initial cutscene in the game, like the intro sequence, it's a little weird. Like the delivery with the music and everything is a little funny. Further in the game, like when the Zelda voice actor has to voice the fake Zelda, like that's evil, that is done masterfully. That whole thing where she's teleporting around in this rebuilt Hyrule Castle area, really well done. It just adds to the experience. When she, in the extra cutscene you get after doing all the other tiers, when she says protect them all, blah, 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 I really like that cutscene, and I think it had enough weight. It had a lot of weight. Matt Mercer, obviously a wonderful Ganondorf. He does amazing delivery. I'm interested to hear some of the other vocal performances in the other languages, because I've heard most of them are good. A lot of how Ganondorf is portrayed is done really well and really in an interesting way. And I mean, this game, in a lot of aspects, it feels like a retelling of Ocarina of Time. I know they're all retellings of each other in some ways, but we have sages. We have Rauru, who has a light power, light sage. You know, this story involves time. Oh yeah, the final battle and like final sequence towards going and fighting Ganondorf is done so well. Like the aspect of fighting the armies of Ganon, and then fighting the bosses if you haven't completed the temples, then into fighting Ganon and the multiple phases of that fight. His final, like him realizing back against the wall and like ripping his stone out and consuming it is like, it's good. I love that. I love the way that they did these scenes. The final battle, fighting on the dragons. It's like, there's a lot of cool things in the previous game. I feel like they saw what people were doing, like the BS people were doing in Breath of the Wild through like abusing glitches and all this stuff. And they found a lot of systems that allow you to do like super crazy shit like that. But it's way more intended, and they can work it into fights, and they can work it into the theatrics of it, and you can have this insane battle that's like in the sky with dragons and all the shit. It played well. It plays super well, and like all the abilities in this game are really good. Oh, one thing I really want to talk about, I haven't looked into this at all online, but I feel like some people might see the ending of the game as sort of an ass pull to just be like, oh, Zelda's fine. I really like a lot of the information that they give you in the tier cutscenes that I guess corroborate what I'm going to say now is like the Sonia teaching Zelda about her time powers and everything, how she talks about how when she uses her time power, she's essentially trying to draw out the memories of that object to return it to a state in time. That's kind of how she describes it to Zelda. I mean, when you collect the tears, those absorb into you, or when you work with the sages, those memories absorb into you. Really neat aspect is that I didn't notice until I watched somebody else play. When you first find Zelda after you get the arm and everything, and she gives you the power, the time reversal stuff, that is her sage cutscene. I just didn't think about it because it happened so early before sages were more prominently or shown to us or whatever. Back to the other thing, Sonia explaining that the way she pulls things back to a certain time is by sort of coaxing the memories out of it. When you're collecting all the tears, you're collecting the memories, they're absorbed into you, and once you complete everything, you defeat Ganon, and then there's the sequence with Zelda where it's the memories of Rauru and Sonia, Zelda's time. All those memories are what you use to coax her back to her human form. Like, it is such a good way of setting that up. It was done so well. I thought about talking about more of the gameplay aspects, but a lot of it is like, this is just refined Breath of the Wild. Like, there's so much more to look and find. They really tested the world when it came to these new powers, because they constructed these worlds based on one set of powers and then had to slightly modify it for another set, and like build new systems both underground and above ground. The game was pretty well tested. And I mean, I never had a crash. I really like the depths, even though as I've played the game for whatever reason, my load times going to the depths have gotten worse. Like it hitches. It's not bad. The scope of this game is just, it's a lot for the Switch. My favorite part of this game was easily the depths and the aspect of exploration of them through the darkness, because you just didn't know what you're going to come upon. Finding out how the depths has its structure based on the overworld map, and I think the sky even has some amount of... No, the sky doesn't have any effect. Pretty sure. The overworld map, though, is how you sort of can see where the walls are. Like, you could map the depths based on the overworld. I can't remember how it works exactly, but I think it's like bodies of water are just walls, and it's like... Yeah, bodies of waters are full on walls and stuff like that. It's really interesting because it automatically creates sections. It's just another like good detail about the game. The game, they poured effort into this game like crazy. I shit on Nintendo sometimes because they really phone it in on some things, and their general terrible business practices, or just shitty business practices. But credit where credit's due in terms of making a good game. Do I think this game is perfect? No. I think there's just a number of issues. It feels like there were decisions made early in development, like the stuff with the stage cutscenes, that don't match the effort that I see for like in other aspects of the game that I feel like came further down the line. I do think the dungeons are better. I don't know if I would consider any of them like standouts in the series. Like, I feel like I went back and played Ocarina of Time, and most of the temple dungeons in those games were on par with, like, these ones are just straight up better. It's interesting. It was very interesting to play this game and then go back and play Ocarina of Time, and then also start playing Majora's Mask. And like, I've played Twilight Princess, I've played Skyward Sword, I played Skyward Sword quite recently. I do think Skyward Sword has pretty good dungeons, but that game drags. I think what I like especially about Tears of the Kingdom is it doesn't drag. It can't drag. You get to choose if it drags or not. It's not overly like cutscene heavy. It's like they force you through the intro, and I think an interesting aspect of this game is the fact that story is a much more central component of it compared to Breath of the Wild. Like, they would not have made an intro like that if they didn't want, they didn't want to push more story and push more structure. Breath of the Wild was a really good game for a lot of reasons because it's weird to describe because I feel like Breath of the Wild very much appeals to non-gamers because you don't have to fight. Combat isn't necessary. Well, okay. Combat is necessary, but you can have a lot of fun in this game without almost any combat. You can just explore, and like, who cares if it's a Switch game that is having issues at 1080p? It's like locked at 30 and it drops below that. It's like, it still looks good. This game made a really good decision in adding these systems and fleshing them out so extremely, and like, when they looked at certain things, they weren't like, well, why would you attach meat to a sword? They just said if it's in your inventory, you can attach it to a sword, like almost like everything, which is just the proper way to do it. And it's like, it hurts nobody. Like, somebody's like, oh damn it, I attached meat to a sword. You just gotta destroy the meat off the sword, dude. And like, being able to, like, all the different aspects that you can do with attaching things to arrows, that's so cool. That's such a good like touch, and it makes fighting things really interesting. Gleeoks are really cool in this game. I didn't know Gleeoks were a thing before this game, but they were. But they're a cool fight either way. All the boss battles I think are good in this game. I think I listed the water one last. It's still a good boss fight. I like the Ganon fights. I like the camera work with the camera. Like every Ganon, the Ganon fight this game really made me think of the Ganon fight in Skyward Sword specifically, because that's the most recent Zelda game I played, but it also the camera angle when you start both of the fights feels very similar to me. The Zonai system for crafting vehicles and all this stuff, this is such a good sandbox game. Like, and that's all I can say about it, because I have not built anything crazy in the game. I just build funny little ships repeatedly. I do like the aspect of being able to just fucking slam so many things together, and like, you can almost crash the game because you've just done too much. And I like that. I like that you can just build insane contraptions, and it just shows how well they built these tools, like built all the different Zonai equipment and letting them how they function. Like, they put so much work into that, because you can tell because of the extreme things people can make and the insane things. Like, I saw someone build like something that had they built logic into like a Zonai thing, and I'm like, that's insane. Or people making instruments out of Zonai things. I mean, I've just seen little clips or just like even screenshots, and I'm like, what? I just make things that fly, or I put rocket on shield. I don't go hard with my building. The game for me was exploring the depths mostly. I finished the depths before anything. I still haven't finished. I mean, I have over 100 hours of the game, but I haven't finished like a lot of things, because a lot of my time in the game is just running around, and that's how I want to play it. I haven't talked about shrines. I don't care about shrines that much. I think the shrines in this game are of a decent quality. For the most part, I've ran into some stinkers, but then there's other ones where I'm like, damn, that is a good shrine. And they will let you, for the most part, break any one of these shrines by attaching a rocket to a shield or a rocket to something. And it's like, I'm glad you're giving me the freedom to just unga boonga finish the shrine. Like, that, I think having a intended path that can be superseded in like a million different ways is good. It's freedom to the player. Slash, I very much want to speedrun this game. The speedrun of this game is really interesting. If you haven't seen it, it's already below 50 minutes. I mean, those runs do exploit something on the original patch of the game, which you can either not do in the current patch or it is just slower. But either way, having any version of this game that's done in 50 minutes already is insane. I mostly want to make this video to talk about things I like about the game, things it does well, and my issues with the game, where I think like this is such an insane accomplishment of a game, but also like there's just some really lazy shit work here. And I know that might sound mean, but this is, you know, this is a massive company that pours an unknown fortune into building this game. So I've just started blabbering, so I'm going to call the video there. I hope you enjoyed me just going crazy with a microphone in front of me while it's like 90 degrees in my room, and I have these lights point at me, hopefully making this green screen effect work, but we'll see. So if you want to hear me ramble more, I have a bunch of videos, but they're a little more constructed, and I feel more awkward in them because of it. I hope this one just gets my thoughts across, because I just want to talk about the game I've put a lot of time in and that I really enjoy. I mean, yeah. Have a good day. Bye. Ugh.